Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. By request, I have an acrylic painting tutorial today, and we're going to paint a pot of brown-eyed Susan flowers, which are kind of like a daisy. They're casual, they're fun, and I know you can do this because we're going to do it step by step from drawing to painting to everything. This video is brought to you by Art Treasures, and they have this lovely set of 18 12 milliliter acrylic paints available right now for $9.99. I'll put a link in the video description. The paints are only on sale for 1 week through the 15th, November 15th, so if you want to snag them, don't wait. I think they make a really nice gift for somebody getting into acrylic paints, or if you want to try acrylics and you just don't want to spend hundreds of dollars getting started, you can start with a nice set like this and have everything you need. You got the colors you're going to be used to hearing me talk about: lemon yellow, yellow ochre, ultramarine, Prussian blue, sap green, white, you know, all the basics. And what we're going to use today, I've actually put out on my palette, and what this is a stay wet palette. It's almost like, and you can make your own, it's almost like just a skinny flat piece of Tupperware. And underneath my palette paper, and you could use wax paper or parchment paper if you don't have palette paper, I have a couple sheets of paper towel which I've sprayed with water. Then I just put my palette paper down and I squirted out the colors I'm using. So the colors that I have here, I got a couple dabs of white, because I know I'm going to go back. I have a lot of white in this picture, and I'm going to go back in with the white. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Together they make a beautiful gray, and I can vary how warm or cool it is. Plus I'll want those shades of brown for the centers of my flowers. I've got lemon yellow, a yellow ochre. This is orange yellow, which is kind of like a cad yellow deep. It's a little bit more red, and then I've got a little smidgen of crimson in case I really need to punch up some color. I'm going to use a watercolor pencil to sketch on with, and I'm going to start by putting in a horizon line, and I will have to probably stop and tip my canvas up to make sure it's straight, but basically it's about a third of the way up from the bottom, and this is actually just the edge of a table. And the reason I'm using a watercolor pencil is because it'll blend in when I paint, and then I won't end up having any weird lines bleeding through like I might with a pencil. So then we're going to have our vessel, which is kind of like a cylinder, and I just want it slightly off center because things look a little nicer when they're slightly off center. By the way, I will link up a reference photo by the talented Lillian Bell in the video description from Paint My Photo. I really enjoy her photographs over there. And I thought this one was just so perfect for a beginner tutorial. And I know that since this is such a deal right now on Amazon, a lot of people are buying this kit, and I figured it'd be nice for them to have something to follow along with. But, you know, as always, you can use whatever you want. And I'm going to put the top on here. It's going to be a little bit skinnier. I got to make sure I got room for the flowers, so I don't want to make it too big. And then I am going to just lightly sketch on my flowers. I want this flower down here. This one is missing some petals. I just want to get a basic shape of it. And its stem is just going to be going back like that with a couple leaves. And we'll do another leaf like that. Got a big kind of like pom-pommy looking flower, which is not a brown-eyed Susan. It's like some sort of white coneflower or daisy. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just going to get the basic shape in because I'll do the petals when I paint. Got a big brown-eyed Susan here. So they kind of have these very upright gumdroppy type of shaped centers. And then when I draw my petals, you've probably seen me do like daisies or sunflowers before. I like to kind of look at it like points on a compass, and I do out from the center, and I just kind of bounce them around, and it just helps me get them lined up a little bit better. We're going to have one kind of peeking up out here. A few little petals. We're not going to see the whole thing, so I didn't bother to draw the circle. Just getting a rough sketch in. You can always print out the photo and trace it if you prefer. One back here. And yours will be more accurate than mine if you trace it, probably. There we go. Alright, now we can start painting, and I gotta grab my brushes, and we're gonna start filling in some shapes. I'm gonna start off with a 1/2 inch flat brush, This is an 8x10 canvas. It's not really big, so I want to have something that's got a little bit of a stiffness so I can really push the paint around. Since this is a tube paint, it tends to be a little thicker than a bottle paint that you might be used to painting if you use the paints from the craft store. So I want to make sure it's got enough push to it. I don't like to have to add water to my paint if I don't need to, because sometimes when you add water, well, it makes it more transparent and streaky, and I don't want it to be transparent or streaky. This feels like it's pretty much good to paint right out of the bottle, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I did my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna just like I would with watercolor, and I added some of the I added some white to it, and I'm getting a really nice gray. Now it is also going a little purple on me, so I think what I'm going to do is grab a little of that yellow ochre, and that's going to help gray it down a little bit more. You know, they make palette paper that's gray as well, and that's really nice to mix on. So if you see that when you're going out to buy palette paper, I do recommend trying that. It is really nice. There we go. It's very creamy and smooth to work with. I am going to start with my background. I'm going to paint up to and over any of the flowers, because I know that my light petals are gonna be opaque over the background, but I don't want to have any white spots showing through. So I'm just kind of very choppily going in around my flowers there. And I'm going to bring some of that over here as well. Just staying above the horizon line. And sometimes you need to, if you're painting, especially if you're painting at a table sitting down, it's a good idea to like tip your canvas up every once in a while, back up, make sure that everything looks like it's perspective wise, in proportion, and whatnot. Now the canvas I'm actually using a very inexpensive canvas that I picked up at the craft store, and it was part of a multi-pack. And the thing that had bothered me about that canvas is that a lot of paints didn't flow very well on it. It's like it was like just too rough or underprimed, and I'm finding these paints are flowing really well and really smoothly on it, so that's really nice to see. Now I want to warm this up as we get a little bit closer to the top of my canvas, so what I'm doing is grabbing more yellow ochre right into that mix there and adding more white, and this is going to give me a warmer color. Quite a bit more white there, pulling some more blue, pulling a little bit more brown, so I'm getting much more of a warmer, brighter color. And I'm going to put it in pretty quickly because I want to be able to blend into that wet paint. When I'm painting, honestly, if I'm using acrylics or oils or even watercolor to that, for that matter, I usually go dark, go into my darks first. I find that with like oils and acrylics that white is very strong, and it tends to dominate when I start to add it in. So if I start a little bit darker, I find that I can blend the white into it and I get a much nicer effect. Pulling some of this, hopefully that's wet enough that I can blend in. I have the advantage that I'm working in my basement, so it is a little bit cooler down here, so I don't have I don't have the upstairs winter heat on where it's gonna dry out my paints or anything. Now if you're getting any streaks, mine seems to be covering pretty well. It seems to be covering really well, actually. But if I do have any streaks, a tip that I use sometimes is I'll take either a fan brush or just a larger flat brush, and I'll just sweep back and forth. And these are fan blenders. That's why, I mean, we use fans for other techniques in acrylic. Sometimes we'll use them for doing like Bob Ross trees, but they're meant for blending. So you can always do that. I'm able to blend this pretty well. This is a little stiff. I probably should have used a synthetic because it did streak my paint a little bit there, but I think I'm just going to tip it. I think I'm doing all right. I think that's all right. Now at this point I recommend that you do the edges of your canvas if you're going to do them, because sometimes it's difficult to match the edges. If you're going to pop this in a frame, you don't need to worry about this, but it's just easier to match this while you have your paint out. Now that I have my edges done, I am going to work on the surface that my pot of flowers is sitting on. Pretty much using the same colors that I just used, except I want it to be lighter, so I'm pulling a little bit more white into my mix. I'm going to start off in the darkest area, which is back here. I'm just going to straighten out that horizon line. It's okay if you pull it into the jar. I do want a little bit of a darker shadow coming out from the jar, but I'm going to get this done up here first. And you can see how my the pencil that I sketched with is just kind of fading into the just kind of fading into the, oops, I got some dark in there, fading into the paint that I've painted with, so that's kind of nice. For the shadow, I do want to make sure I have a little bit of a shadow coming off of that, that pitcher, pot, whatever you want to call it. So I'm taking any of the colors I used for my shadow. I hope this helps that you can see my palette right there. I'm going to sketch out, let's see, my shadow would be coming out here. Remember our light source is up here, that's why we put our light yellow, ochre, and white paint up there. And we're going to pull this off of that edge and just kind of let it fade out, and then we're just going to fill that in. I didn't know how these paints would blend on this canvas. I'm really pleased with them. I feel like they're just thick enough that I'm getting the coverage that I need, but they're not so thick that they're dragging. I think it's an excellent choice for a beginner. And it's very affordable. And the best thing is, if you try it and you're like, well, I don't know if acrylics are for me, you spend 10 bucks instead of hundreds of dollars, or, you know, there's so much of a variety of price out there. Because sometimes you wonder, because like, well, if I go and I buy inexpensive paints, am I going to be able to learn to paint, or or will my efforts be wasted because I'm using cheap paints and I'm not, you know, even getting the experience? But I could tell you that they're like painting with any other paints. I mean, they're working fine for me. I am going over that flower now just because I'm thinking it's going to be just too difficult to paint around it, so I'm just going ahead and getting that in. I want a lot more white, a little bit more yellow ochre here, because I want this brighter over here because our light is coming down. So I want to make sure I'm getting that in there. But we sketched on with that brown, which is kind of like that burnt sienna, so I don't think we're going to have any issues. Don't be afraid to turn your canvas and get, you know, if it's more comfortable for you to paint this way, get it at a different angle. I'm feeling like this is a little too brown and purple, so I'm going to go in a little yellow ochre, a little bit more blue. See if I can make that shadow a little more gray. I think I'm doing all right. Yeah, that's much more gray. It had too much of the red and brown, which the brown is very reddish, and the reddish and ultramarine blue were making it more purple. So just that little bit of yellow ochre, it wasn't a lot, it was just enough to correct it. So I'm just pulling out that shadow there. And I also want you to go around and do the sides here at this point if you're working on a canvas that's stretched all the way to the sides. If you're working on canvas paper or canvas board, you of course don't need to do that, but it's a lot cheaper. Like, I sell my work at a little antique shop, so if I can just put a wire on the back and hang it up for sale, then it's so much more economical and I can sell it at a reasonable price. If I have to factor in framing into the price of my art, it honestly it makes it so I can't sell it sometimes. So I try to keep aware of the price of my materials. Okay, so now I'm going to fill in the edges, and we're going to go on to the vessel next. Okay, do you remember what I told you about white being the most powerful color here? Well, we want this pot to be white, so we're going to start off with our white paint because it is, I want it to be white and it is the most powerful color. So in this, when we're doing with like an opaque paint versus some colors that could be semi-transparent, because they are, you know, just because they have more pigment, the brighter your color, the less opaque they're going to be generally. So I wanted to get this opaque white paint in, and we're just going to block in our vase here. And I know it might be hard to see because we have painted like over it in parts because we want to have that nice smooth background. That's all right. Just take your time and fill that in. And remember, feel free to turn it, because sometimes it's easier to see if your thing is not symmetrical if you look at it upside down. I can see here I haven't come down to the bottom of where I originally drew it, so I want to just pull it around and do that. Basically just want to fill in that shape. Now that we've got that shape filled in, you want to make sure that you have a good coat of paint on there because we need that base to blend into. You can also see that it's picked up some of the colors and blended in some of the colors that we've streaked across. So we've already got some nice local color there. We are going to still be working with our shades of gray. I'm doing a little bit heavier on the blue with this gray, and I am going to add kind of a little bit of a shadow across under the lip of the top of it. And I'm going to drag that down. We don't have as much open time to blend with acrylics as we do with oil, so we want to use an economy of brush strokes, meaning we don't want to fuss with it. We want to get it down and kind of leave it be. So I'm just going to go through and add a little bit of a toning to this. Remember, our light's coming from up in this corner, so this edge is going to be lighter and the rest of it's going to be darker. We will end up putting some brighter highlights on it after everything's dry, kind of our, you know, sprinkles or cherry on top, if you will. But I just want to go ahead and get a little toning in here so those highlights will show up when it comes time to put them in. Plus little bits of like a blue-gray here and there are going to make our flowers like nice and vibrant, and that's kind of what we want there. And I don't mind if I have a little bit of a texture in here, but I am trying to keep it fairly smooth. So I'm, like, if I have brush strokes, I kind of want them streaking down, because then it will look kind of like the an appropriate reflection on this pot. Alright, and it's better to, I mean, honestly, it's better probably to have a little too many shadows than not enough, because then we won't have to do much shadowing in the future. We'll be just doing the highlighting. So don't worry if you're getting more shadows down than I am. You probably have an easier time of highlighting later. And we'll do some darker shadows right where the vase meets the table as well. Now I'm going to switch to a round brush, and I'm going to go in with this yellow-orange here. It's a really rich, beautiful color. And I'm going to start to throw in some petals over here, and I'm really not going to worry too much about making a flower, because these are kind of the petals that are sticking kind of out in the background. They're a little darker. They're not our focal point flowers, and I'm going to do a few over here too. And this yellow is a little more transparent than like the white we were using. Remember what I said about the bright colors? They're going to be less transparent, but that's all right because this is in the background, and I'm not worried about how transparent these are. I just want to kind of fill in some of that white and have that darker yellow as a contrast, because I'm going to be putting in a brighter yellow. Let me throw a little bit more just color in there, and I think I'm going to go ahead and mix up my lighter closer to us flowers. So what we're going to need is the lemon yellow, and we're going to need white, because the white is going to give it the opacity that we need. That's what's going to block the colors behind it from showing through, because unlike watercolor, acrylics can be opaque, they can be transparent depending on the pigments used, but we have the ability to work back to front, so it's very forgiving, and I think that's why a lot of people really enjoy using acrylics. So if you reload your brush every time, you can kind of do these petals in one stroke. I'm just kind of doing these would be like comma strokes if you've done any toll painting before. You can be very expressive with this. I'm just kind of remembering my sketch. I remember those ones were foreshortened. We couldn't see the ends of those petals. Now if you want more rounded on the end, because those look a little fake being so pointy on the end, you can go ahead and start your stroke from the outside and work it in like that too, and even round off some of those petals, because they are a little pointier than what we would want. They're pretty, but it's up to you. You do it however you want to do it. You can go right in directly with white too if you want, and you can add highlights right into the, when you go right into the wet paint like that, they blend. And you know it's time to reload when you can't see any more of the highlight coming through. Now I'm just going to keep going with this brush with this whiter color because that's kind of the color of this flower over here, and I can still see the center. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull the petals off from that center. It's a really almost like a pom-pommy daisy. It's got so many layers of light colored petals, so I'm just going to go ahead and just pull, flick little strokes up from the center. You do not have to be too fussy with it. I'd like my inner strokes maybe to be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to see. Let me I'm going to wipe off my brush here so I don't need to wash it. You got to be careful, I think, when you're using acrylics, especially if they're not super like heavy body ones. You have to be careful that you don't introduce too much water because it can lift up the colors underneath. So I just try to wipe my brush, or even if I do rinse it in the bucket, I go and I wipe it on a paper towel before I use it again, just to keep my colors nice and fresh. There, I just want the impression of these layers of flowers. I think it's so so fresh and pretty. So now I'm going to go in. I'm going to grab a little bit of these two colors together. So that's my mix, the lemon and the white, plus I'm grabbing a little bit of that orange yellow. And I just want a little bit of that in the center near where I'm going to have my brown. There we go. These are so much nicer than like the paints that come in the pots. If you do paint by number, or maybe you're getting your kids a paint by number set, half the time those things are dried out. If you do get your kids paint by numbers, I would recommend getting one of these sets. It's only $10 and it will get them through many of those paint by numbers. That way, if they end up with the kits that have the dried paint, which it seems like half of them have like dried paint in the pots, you can go ahead and replenish those. I'm going to go ahead and just put a little dot of this dark brown. This is the burnt sienna, just picked up on my dirty brush right in the center there. Now I am going to grab yellow ochre on that same dirty brush. See, I've got both colors on there. Can you see that? And now I'm just going to stipple around that like a donut almost. So I'm making a donut around my... There we go. That's all there is to that. So I do need a darker color. I'm going to go ahead and grab some of the ultramarine blue and mix it in with the brown. I did not clean the yellow off my brush because remember, that kind of keeps it from getting purple. And I am going to put the big gumdrop center on this brown-eyed Susan. Is it brown-eyed Susan or black-eyed Susan? I think it's brown. Let me know in the comments below if you know. I'm always confused with plants, but you guys always know what they are and you tell me, so I do appreciate the non-judgy info that I get. And I'm going to tap, I mix a little more blue in, make it a little darker, and I'm tapping that along the shadow edge. Because remember, our light's coming over there. Top of that's going to be brighter. This edge is going to be a little darker. And then I'm also going to tap in just a little dark on that one. And I'm going to do a real pointy one sticking out there. There we go. Okay, we're going to need some stems. So I am going to wash this brush off because I like this brush. Let's see what size it is. I think it's a number 6, but let's take a look. It's a number 6, Grumbacher brown synthetic. We're going to make some green. We're going to use lemon yellow because that yellow is more green. And we're going to use ultramarine blue because that's what we've been using. Okay, I don't like to bring new colors in at this stage of the game. You could use a sap green from the kit because it's a lovely color, but I honestly... if I have enough colors on my palette to make the color I need, I go ahead and I make it because I know I'm going to have harmony. And your picture is going to look a little bit more professional if you do that. So I'm going to go in and just put in some stems. You can also throw in some leaves, especially if you have any areas where it's like, oh, I forgot to paint that section. I'm just going to just throw a leaf in there. No one's going to know. I won't tell anybody that you forgot to paint a leaf or you didn't paint anything in there. You can go ahead and fill in any places you think you might want a leaf. Like there weren't any little leaves in the photo, but I thought, you know, that's kind of pretty, so I think I'm going to do that. A little highlight on that. There, a little highlight on that one too would be pretty. All right, and remember our flower on the ground here. Let's see if we can sketch that in freehand. I think we can do it. You think we can? I know we can. We got this. Sketch our little stem, easy as pie. We're going to put a couple little leaves on there. What we're going to do is we're going to point our brush towards a stem. We're going to push our brush into the canvas and we are going to twist and lift that puppy up. We're going to do the same thing over here. I think they have opposing petals, so I think they're Kind of symmetrical. There we go. I'm so proud of you guys. You did it. I think we need another one over here too. And yes, we might need to make a little shadow on the table, but I totally know you can do that. All right, we're going to rinse that off. And this time we're going to start with, we'll do our yellow again because it's just a little easier to do the petals first. Let's go in with this. Let's double load. Let's load up with this orange yellow, and then let's dip in the mix of yellow, lemon and white. Okay, so this is what our brush looks like. You see that? We got orange, kind of orangey on the bottom, and that pastel yellow on the top. And we're going to work from the outside in because I want my lighter color on the outside. So we're going to press and swoop it to the stem. I'm going to press and swoop it to the stem. I'm going to reload. We're going back in the yellow, twirl it right in there. We're going to tip it in that lighter color. We're going to go over here. Whoops, I got a bead of water on there. That's going to give me trouble if I don't wipe it. We are going to press, swoop it to the center. We are going to do it again. A little shorter this time because it's kind of resting on the edge there. I think we can get 2 in there. Because remember, we're going to be putting a, I want this fuller actually. It's not full enough in my thing. I'm going to have to make it a little fuller. Yes, we're going to have some foreshortening there, so I'm making mine a little fuller. And you can go back in. If you need a little bit more light here and there, go back in. Give it that beautiful, thick, impressionistic look. It's so pretty. I love how inexpensive these paints are. Mine's more of a chrysanthemum now because I wanted it nice and full. Alright, so now we're going to make our brown center. I'm just going to wipe my brush off. I don't think I need to clean it for that. I'm going to dip into that nice dark brown that we mixed. Now, if you weren't comfortable with mixing, you have 18 colors there and you can squirt them all out. And that's, you know, that might be actually a little more a more useful way to use your paint because then you won't run out of those favorite colors. But, you know, the colors I always mix from. But I really encourage you to learn how to mix your colors. The nice thing about a set like this, you may decide that you like Van Dyke Brown more than you like Burnt Sienna, or you might like Cobalt Blue more than you like Ultramarine Blue. So when you use up a color, you can always buy a large tube of the one color that you like the most. That way you're going to use your art dollars much more wisely because you're not going to be buying, I mean, imagine, look at this. Imagine if you went to the store and you bought big tubes of each of these 18 colors. That would cost you probably $200, $100 to $200, depending on the brands you get. You might not use all of them. If you start like this and you use up ultramarine blue, then you go buy a big tube of ultramarine blue. You know you're buying what you're going to use, and I think that's really smart. So now I've mixed my nice dark brown again, or I'm sorry, kind of gray, dark grayish color. Let's just give it a test there. You can switch to a smaller brush if you want to. I think I'm okay with this because I'm going to use it straight up and down. In fact, I'll tip my canvas a bit because I think my hand might be in the way if I do it like that. I am going to go along the edge, right, where the base is touching the table, just to give it that really deep shadow right there. Okay? It just kind of pulls it off of the back a little bit. And now I'm going to mix in a little bit of white. Gosh, I think I might have planned my paints pretty well. I don't think I will have to resquirt anything. And I'm making the shadow for under the flower. Now, I don't really want to add any, the reason I don't want to add water, if I had let this background completely dry, and then a couple hours I came and decided I wanted to add that shadow, I would add a little water to it. But because this hasn't had time to cure, we've only been painting like half an hour, I'm afraid I'm going to lift up that color underneath if I do that. So what I'm going to do is just try to get my color just right and just paint on my shadow. So I know the bottom of the stem would be touching the table and the top of the stem would be raised up because the petals on the flower are lifting it up. So that's why my line gets further away from the stem as I go towards the flower, because it's up off the table a little bit more. And then I'm going to put my lights coming from up here and kind of coming down like this, so I know I'm going to have more shadow to the front of each of these leaves. Oops, I picked up a little bit of that. I picked up some yellow. And if you are working on, I would really recommend actually letting that dry before you do the shadow, just because if you make a mistake, you can take a wet Q-tip and you can lift it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these little shadows in here. that petal seems to be way up, so I want that to be really light, so I'm just really dry brushing that shadowing because I don't want it to be really dark. And over here, I'm just going to kind of sneak these shadows in and not be too specific with them because I'm looking at my reference photo, but I didn't sketch it exactly like my reference photo, so I don't have a good shadow reference, so I'm just going to go and kind of fudge it a little bit there. And remember, if you let the background dry, you can go in with a wet Q-tip and you can touch anything up that you need to. I'm just kind of going to try to pick up a little bit of that yellow with a wet brush there because I did smidge into my yellow. And if your flower is dry, you're not going to get into your yellow paint by mistake. There we go. But it's important to know how to fix these things, I think. I'm a big believer in the teachable moments. So there we go. We're going to cover that up. Wonderful. All right, so clean your brush because we're going to do our final highlights and our painting's going to be done. That was pretty darn easy, don't you think? I am going to, I might need to actually get a little more white. Yes, I'm going to need a little more white. Even though I did the 2 smidgens of white, I still came out a little short, so just a little, look at that. It's hardly any. It's like maybe the size of a lentil of white paint. Make sure my brush is nice and clean. And we're going to do our highlights, and this is what really makes a difference, really pulls your painting together. Make sure there's no beads on my brush. So my brightest highlights are going to be on this side of the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have really nice bright highlights there. You could also switch to a flat brush if you wanted wider highlights. I might do that. I'm going to get these in first. Since you do have glass and it's reflected, we will get some reflections over here as well. If you lost your edge, you can go ahead and put a slice of light down there too. Get comfortable, move your canvas or move yourself however you need to be so that you can paint comfortably. If you feel like you need some shadows on here, I really think that makes that pop against the background. You can totally do that too. You know, it's the same colors you were using before, the ultramarine blue, the burnt sienna, little yellow ochre if it's too purple. Go ahead and add those shadows in. If you felt like, oh, I don't have the definition there that I really thought I had, you can go ahead and add that right in. You need to have both. You need to have the shadow and the highlight. And of course, if you let this dry like completely, you could go in and you know, water it down and do like glazes with a little bit of water. Since I did not let it dry that much, I really can't do that without messing things up. So I'm just trying to be very economical with my brush strokes. I still might need a little bit more white actually. You can also get some colors on the vase, like if you could get a little yellow reflection on there from that flower. Grab a little bit of that, drag some of that up. Whoops, too much water on my brush. Gotta be careful about lifting. You could add a little bit of that up down here too, because of all the yellow you have up there. Remember, glass and glazed ceramic is going to reflect all of this stuff. You can do a little green. It just makes it a little more interesting. But there you have it. I'm really going to call this painting done. It was a lot of fun to paint, and any beginner can do this. Have fun. If you're not comfortable drawing, I will link up the reference photo below. You can always print it out and use graphite paper or whatever you want. Trace it onto your canvas. That way you can kind of have a template to start with. But I do encourage you to give it a try. Again, I want to thank our sponsor, Art Treasures, for offering this amazing deal. They're only offering the sale for you guys for a week, so if you do want it, I would order it. It's on Amazon, so like if you're a Prime member, I think you get it shipped for free, which is really cool. But again, it's the Art Treasures set of 18 acrylic paint colors. There you see I painted with it. Paint's fine, nothing wrong with it, and it's cheap. So get the Frugal Crafter seal of approval. If you enjoyed this acrylic painting and would like to see more, let me know in the comments below. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this with your painty, crafty friends. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.